Hey guys, I'm up here in the mountains of Central Oregon, hanging out with the mosquitoes and the lake in the mountains. But while up here, I figured I'd run through some focus stacking with you and how we capture and process that. So, gonna take you to the back here. And first thing to do is capture the shot. So, I'm going to focus down here on the bottom. Now we're getting the front foreground of the image in focus. Because of the hyperfocal distance, I won't be able to get everything in focus with one shot. So I'm going to go ahead and do a 3-shot stack here. So I'm going to shoot pretty much around the middle of the image. Take another shot here. And last up, we're going to go ahead and bring it up. We'll just hit the back here. So up there by the mountains and all. Get that in focus. And take the shot. Man, mosquitoes are terrible up here. But, all right. So, there we have it. We have our 3 shots that we're going to focus stack. Now I will take it back to the house, put it in Photoshop, and power it all up there and show you how we do it in Photoshop. I've brought them back and loaded them into Lightroom. Right now we're in the library window, but we're going to come over here to develop. And if you take a look, all 3 images are pretty similar. But what we are really taking a look at here is this foreground. So on the first image, which is the image where we focused on the foreground, we can see the foreground is, sorry about that. We can see the foreground is pretty sharp. Like it's looking pretty good. But when we come in and look at the background here, because of the hyperfocal distance of our lens, we can see that it's kind of soft in the back. So if we come through, the midground is going to be, in that second image, it's going to be sharpest in the center, which is what we're targeting. But then when we come to this last image, it'll be very apparent that this foreground down here is now very soft, but the mountain, it's nice and sharp. So what we want to do is take those 3 images and blend them together to give us a nice sharp image from front to back, start to finish, foreground to background. So what we're going to do is first in Lightroom, if there's any modifications that we want to make, we're going to make that now. So I am going to remove chromatic aberrations. I'm going to do any white balance adjustments, if there are any that I want to make. Oh, definitely not. I kind of like how it was shot. I think I'm going to stick with as shot here. And any exposure adjustments. I might brighten it up just a hair to make it a little bit easier for the for Photoshop to see the lines and do the stack. In terms of highlights and anything, I think I'm just going to do all of that once the stack is complete in Photoshop. But if you'd rather do it on the Lightroom side, now is a great time to do it. Do it before you do the stack, because pretty much after you do the stack, I would say for myself, most of the final adjustments are done in Photoshop. I might bring it back to Lightroom for a couple of quick tweaks, but that's about it. So now that I've made those adjustments, I'm going to select all of these images down at the bottom. I'm going to come into Develop Settings, Sync Settings, and I'm going to sync all of the changes that I made between all 3 photos. So now all 3 photos have the same adjustments to exposure and chromatic aberration removed. So now I'm completed in the Lightroom side, so I want to bring these shots over to Lightroom. So come in, right click, go into Edit In, come down and select Open as Layers in Photoshop. And this is going to run through and open up all of those shots in Photoshop within a layer, which is where we're going to want them. And just to be clear, once I'm done with the stack, which shots were the foreground and the background, I'm going to go ahead and relabel these to align with what their focal point is. Alright, so we have the foreground, midground, and background. Now, let's go ahead and select all of those. And we're going to come up, go to Edit, Auto Align Layers. We're going to leave it on a auto. We're not going to worry about the lens corrections. And go ahead and set OK. It's going to come through, and Photoshop is supposed to go through and align all of those layers based off of the pixels. Alright, so we have all of those labeled now. We're going to go ahead and add them to a group. In that group, I'm just going to rename as stack, because this is the group that has all the images that I'm going to go in and stack, and I'm going to duplicate that, and I'm going to call that stack group, or the copied group, I'm now going to call it original. So these are unaltered shots on the Photoshop side, and you'll see in a little bit why we would potentially want to use those. So now we'll go ahead and deselect it, make it not visible. We're not going to use the original right now. We're going to come back to stack, select all of the images, and right now I have 3 images. You could have 2 images, you could have 10 images. I mean, you could have as many images as you want for doing this focus stack, but I am working with 3. So now, after we have selected all of the images, come up to Edit, go down to Auto Blend Layers, and we are going to select, actually it should already be selected for us in Photoshop, but select Stack Images and hit OK. Photoshop is now going to go through, and it is going to try and find the sharpest parts in each of those layers and blend them so that the image is sharp from front to back. We don't have more than 50, so I would just say OK to this. I've been getting this error and I can't figure out why. I've tried to run the diagnostics, but I'm going to go ahead and ignore that for now. And I'm going to come through and take a look at the image and see how it did. So first, let's start with the foreground here. Let's take a look down here. That is looking nice and sharp. That is exactly what we're looking for. It is looking very good. Just giving it a quick once over, checking to see if we have any sort of blending issues from our focus stack. So far, it is looking really good. A couple of times I've seen that Photoshop was having some issues out in this area, and it is still a little soft halfway up this tree, as you can see. So we will go in and we will fix that here in just a bit, and I'll show you how we're going to do that. But other than that, the rest of the image is looking pretty sharp. So yeah, I would say the rest of the image looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and take a look at resolving this issue down below. So here we are. Image looks pretty good. The stack looks pretty good, but we had a blend issue with these little trees up here, where it was pretty sharp halfway down and then pretty soft the rest of the way up. So what we're going to do is let's find an image where those trees look pretty good, pretty sharp. I would say this mid-ground layer looks good right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to deselect the whole folder here. I'm going to drag the midground layer out and close that. So now you can see the entire image is going to be in the focus of that midground shot because we haven't masked it at all yet. But what we're going to do is we're going to create a layer mask on there. And I only want to mask out the trees themselves that have become kind of soft in the image. So what I actually want is a black mask that until I paint on it with white, nothing on this layer will be visible. So what I'm going to do is hit Command or Control I, and that will put a black layer over that mask. And now for the fun part. We go in, grab a brush. We are going to select white because we want to draw on this black layer with white. And I've got some smoothing. All right, so we got that white brush. And let's set a size for it. We don't want it too big. There it is. All right, let's bring it in. Smaller brush. Let's set it with a opacity of 100%, but let's bring the flow down. Let's bring it really low. And that means that with every time that we go, let's go with 10%. So now every time we go over this paint on this layer with the flow down at 10%, it means that we are going to only apply 10% of the maximum, which is 100% of white paint on this layer at this point. So it will take 10 button presses, paintings, and releases before we get to 100% of the paint applied where we're painting. So let's go ahead and let's paint some of the white on here. Get right over this tree. We want to bring in that sharpness. Let's do it on the hills back behind too, because you can see they are also just kind of soft. All right, so that was the first button click. Let's keep on going. So this is the second. Sharpening up that tree and these hills some more. Let's one more on that area. All right, I'm gonna make the brush a little bigger, speed this up just a hair. You can see now this blend is looking a lot better. I'm also noticing that the trees along the hillside here just seem also kind of soft. And they were all right in the layer that we selected for the midground, but you know what? Let's go ahead and step that back one. And I think the trees are looking pretty good in terms of sharpness there. But lastly, let's go ahead and bring forward our background layer as well. We'll bring that out. We'll do the same thing. We'll create a layer mask. We'll invert it, pressing Control or Command I. It is now black. And let's bring in some of the trees in the back here. Oops. There we go. Let's get these nice and sharp back here too. Bring up our flow just a little bit more. Let's go with 36%. Put a little bit more paint on there, speed up the process just a hair. You can see out here on the edges also, due to the focus breathing that our lenses were doing when we did the focus stack, you'll get this every time, but you can see this very small edge on the left side. That is where the the lens was focus breathing, and when we did the auto align, those are those parts that are going to be kind of cut off. So we can resolve that in just a second here. But in terms of the sharpness of the tree lines and everything and the trees, I would say we're pretty good. I think I'm pretty happy with how sharp we are here now. I don't see any glaring issues. Definitely looks a lot more properly blended and a lot more in focus. Or a lot more sharp, I guess I should say. And you can see it over along here too. A little bit of that focus breathing along the edges. You should probably see it down on the bottom also. Yeah, there's a little softness, a little strangeness on the edges. So last step on the focus stacking here, we'll just go ahead and bring in the sides of our image just a little bit. And I don't want to lose the ratio at this point, so I'm going to hold the shift button while I drag, and that'll keep us from adjusting the ratio of the image. Okay. All right, and there you have it. The image is now sharp from foreground to background. We have a nice focus stacked image. I don't think we need this foreground at all, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. And at this point, we can move on and we can do our final edits.